We're all hustling all the time. We're hustling, we're promoting. We're all literally running around. We're not just talking about technology here. That's the important thing. I mean, one of the missing word you could say here was capitalism, capitalist cyberspace-time crisis. Because this isn't simply about this, it's about it isn't simply about technology. It isn't simply about the good old days, before technology arrived and ruined things. And shouldn't we go back to artisanal, locally baked bread made by peasants out of organic, wool or whatever. No, it's not, and it's definitely not about that. But it is about. I mean, I think one question we have to ask ourselves is, why are we now so obsessed with communication? I can tell you, phone calls and letters in the 90s didn't occupy that much of my time. A phone call. If I got a phone call from a friend, it might be nice. If I got a letter, quite nice maybe. But I didn't follow the postman around all day looking for a letter. But see, I think what's happened is that we now, for reasons that are not accidental, we now equate technology with communications technology. And that kind of bullies us into this position whereby, you're opposed to iPhones and cyberspace. That means you must be an anti-technological nostalgic who wants to go back to living in, go back to hand-woven craft or something like that. No, he's specifically about what Jody Dean calls communicative capitalism. This, and we have to think of why is the case that communication has become unmoored from any other purpose apart from itself. You can say, there was, cybernetics as a science was the study of, communication and control. That's defined by Norbert Wiener when he invented the term in the 40s. But now we have control by communication, I would argue. And I think some of the best theorists on this writing in the 70s, actually. And I would say Jean Baudrillard, if you read back his texts about communication, the onset of communication, these texts are amazing. These texts now, read Baudrillard's text, The Ecstasy of Communication, which I think has maybe come out either late 70s or early 80s, a bloody long time ago. And this is basically a description of what it is to be on Twitter. Where if you read these texts, they're all about the constant, the inability to construct a coherent self anymore in the face of this constant input, instantaneity, a kind of schizo-subjectivity, as Baudrillard puts it, which has no halo of private protection anymore. This was what and when you go back to read these texts of Baudrillard, you think, what was he seeing in his own day with the bloody French Minitel system, and in the 80s where you could barely make a phone call? It's almost like he time traveled into our period and was writing about that in lots of ways. Because what we're talking about then is a synergy between, and a really bad one, between the imperatives of the dominant form of capitalism now, and certain communication technologies. And the first thing you do, you go to a mobile device, check it in that kind of excited panic in which we do this kind of thing, and immediately feel this heavy weariness come over you, the weariness of the demands of cyberspace. The demands of cyberspace, which are literally infinite, and which, you switch it on, you go on Twitter, right, read this, be outraged about that. There's something else we've got to be outraged about. And of course, with Twitter, you're always in this reactive panic time, because a lot of the time on Twitter, you're struggling to find out what it is that the original topic is. So you spend a lot of time scrolling back down. What are they talking about here? What's this about? Why is this person trending? And this low-level panic, which of course is exacerbated by the actual shitness of the mobile interface. Just think how crap these machines are, how ill-suited for purpose. If you look, just think about it. Think about it. Everything I think Deleuze and Guattari, particularly Guattari, argued about the plasticity of libido. That there's no natural drives in human beings. You can produce desire out of any kind of assemblage. This is fully vindicated by the whole thing with mobile phones. And smartphones. I noticed in Europe much less than in London. World capital of control addicts and kind of cyberspatial misery. Where if you go to London, like everybody, and I mean almost without exception, is looking at their screens almost all of the time. And so what you've had, and think about that, that's a massive behavioral change in the human population over the course of not even a decade. When do people start doing that? Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, looking at tiny screens. And this is what everyone's doing. They're not reading books. They'll read a newspaper quickly, but quickly get rid of that. Just back to important business of looking at this really tiny screen that you can't really see properly. That's what I mean about the crapness of it. And touchscreen things are the worst of all. They sort of slide out. The kind of bleary. You've replaced this crisp digital interface, the keyboard, with this kind of slimy, kind of idiotic interface, via touchscreen. Which is really difficult to use. It's not at all functional. So I was thinking about it the other day. It's like we're all in some weird game show. We have to send a message not really knowing in a really short amount of space, 140 characters, really quickly. And you're living like that all of the time. This is highly stressful, right? This is highly stressful. But that's not the kicker even. The kicker is that's not even the worst bit about it. We actually enjoy this.